So we have Coach Dan Burke with us. Coach Burke is the head men's coach, Wilmington, and he's been there going into year 7.
Yeah.
7 years now. Really excited to hear if you guys have questions. You can drop them in the chat. But I'm just really excited, Coach. I appreciate you joining me. Got some of our players, some Team Push kids, some Max Hoops guys. So just wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit, give them something to do on a Sunday afternoon besides doing what they've done the last 2 months. Not much happening for some of these guys, so they're able to schedule their time around it. But maybe give them a little bit more of your background. Maybe start in high school. You're kind of just getting started with that story. Start with your high school and kind of your journey to being a head coach now.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. Salute to you guys for spending some time, trying to learn and trying to get better in any way that you can. It's easy to just play video games the whole time or do whatever it is you guys do, but to be invested in your craft is, it's really a great thing. So basically I'm the coach at Wilmington University in Delaware. Great location. We're about 30 minutes south of Philadelphia, hour north of Baltimore, close to DC, close to New York. So I've been in this area my whole life, pretty much. I grew up in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, which is about 30 minutes northwest of Philadelphia. I went to a small Catholic high school called St. Pius X, which is actually no longer in existence. It combined with another Catholic school to make a larger Catholic school. So I played basketball there. I was an okay player in high school, had a lot of D2, D3 interest. Ended up going to Chestnut Hill College, which at the time was a Division III school. And unique experience is that it was the first year that it had males on campus. So it was an all women's school. And, I was part of the first, I see Caleb is a fan of that idea.
Caleb might need better odds than that even, Coach.
So it was an all women's school. So I got a chance to not only be part of the first male class on campus, but the first male basketball team. So it was a really fun experience because back then, the coaches didn't make teams of all transfers. So we had 12 freshmen and maybe three guys that were a little bit older. So we all were learning on the fly, and we had a really good first season, especially for a provisional D3 team. But my story gets a little bit unique in that after my freshman year, I decided to transfer because, I think at the time I was a little bit immature and I had been playing basketball my whole life. And, it had always been my goal to play college basketball. So, not to get off track here, but I'm reading a book right now called Burn Your Goals. And it's about actually not setting goals, because once you obtain that goal, you don't know how much further you can go, because there's a sense of satisfaction if you set a goal once you obtain it, and you almost stop trying to go even further. So I think me as an 18-year-old, once I obtained my goal of playing college basketball, I kind of felt like there was an end to the story. And I felt I got a little bit complacent. I wasn't sure how much I loved it anymore. So I decided to transfer, and I actually went to James Madison University for a semester. So I worked that following fall semester, and I went to school just as a student at James Madison in that spring. And that was the point where I really realized how much I loved basketball, because it was the first time I had been without it. And, I hate to use the word depression because it really is a serious issue, but I think I was a little bit depressed because, I'm used to that schedule and used to being in the gym and with teammates and coaches. And I didn't have that. So luckily, I had handled myself well enough and departed Chestnut Hill in a manner that they decided they were open to taking me back. When I left, the coach, he said that if you change your mind, you always have a home here. So, I contacted him. I let him know how I was feeling, and I finished my 3 years at Chestnut Hill after that.
Were they still Division 3 at that time when you finished
Yeah,
up?
so it was Division III, my second and third years playing. And then my senior year, it transitioned from D3 to D2.
Okay.
So within my 4-year basketball career, I was actually part of 2 new beginnings, right? As a freshman, it was a brand new program. And then my senior year, it was going from D3 to D2. Now, I can't lie, I was pretty disappointed because, we were a championship level team as a D3 team in the conference where we were. And I was excited to be a senior trying to win a championship. So obviously when you go from, go up a level, going from D2 to D3, you're going to go back to the back of the line, so to speak, and rebuild. So, I was a little bit disappointed maybe that my senior season would have been a rebuilding process, but it was a great experience playing for sure.
Then from there, Coach, tell us a little bit about how you went from playing your senior year and got into coaching. I know some of the guys that are on this are thinking maybe to get into coaching. I know I've talked to some about coaching as a career. How did you go from a college player into your coaching career?
Yeah. So one of the consistent themes you're gonna hear from me is that you never know what can benefit you in the future. Okay. So what I mean is it's always in your best interest to do the right thing, act the right way, present yourself in the right manner, because you never know where it can lead for you. I already mentioned it, right? I was able to go back to the school I had left because I had a good reputation, because I handled things the right way, because I didn't burn any bridges. So I wasn't a great player by any means, but I always did all the little things the right way. And the coach that I played for, he knew I wanted to get into coaching. So because I was never late, always positive, was a leader, was a good representative for the program, essentially my career was like a 4-year-long job interview. So
True.
after I graduated, there was an opening on the staff, and pretty much with no questions asked, the coach that I played for had me on his staff. So, to be able to be a Division II assistant coach with no experience at 22, 23 years old, however old I was, 23 at the time, I think, that's very rare. And the only way it happened is because I built that trust that coach could depend on, throughout his career knowing me.
I love that idea, and I think that's really important for the people listening to get, is you're always interviewing for that next job, and that's where, or you never really have to interview if you're living your life the way you should be living it, because people are going to give you that opportunity, or they're going to see, wow, he carried himself with class all the way through. It's not like you just put on that good guy face for your interview, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's a valuable lesson for the people on the call to hear, is that, it's, you're always auditioning, you're always on stage for that. And I think you said it's in your best interest to be putting that best foot forward at all times, because you never know what's going to happen down the road, where somebody that you met previously is going to be in a position could influence where you're, influence the position you're looking for.
Right. And I definitely don't mean it to come across as like a means to an end type thing. Like, you don't want to do the right thing because maybe something
Exactly.
happened
Yeah.
well for you. You do it because it's the right thing to do. But then what I believe is, if good things happen to good people, I believe.
I believe that too.
If you do things the right way and handle yourself properly, if people hear your name and they have positive thoughts instead of negative thoughts, ultimately good things will happen as a result. But you don't do things simply because you want to get something in return, if that makes sense.
No, that makes complete sense to me. I think that you don't do it with the expectation of getting something in return. It's just you do the right thing because it's the right thing. And then if in the end something does happen back, I think it will happen, but that's not why you do it, right? You do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so you went
especially for those of you that wanted to get into coaching, or really just in life, entitlement is the worst, in my opinion, is the worst trait that a person can have, right? So if you say, well, I did this, so I deserve this. There's really no such thing as deserve, right? You get opportunities that present themselves. You may think that you deserve something, but at the end of the day, opportunities come as they come. But whenever you feel like in your heart of hearts that you're entitled to something, that's really something that you should be aware of and try to fight, because that really nothing good comes out of that.
I'm going to write that down. Fight entitlement.
Mm.
Because I think that is something that's rampant in our society. And I know I see it when kids come into Pacific and they're like, well, I want to play this much. And it's like, well, you got to earn it, right? Everything earned, everything earned. And that entitlement is rampant in our society. Just kids, and people, adults want stuff that they haven't earned. And you're not really entitled to anything.
Yeah.
So I think that entitlement, it's a horrible trait, and fight entitlement. So tell us about how you went from your school that you played at, from Chestnut Hill. How did you get to your next stop?
Sure. So my experience at Chestnut Hill was great. The head coach, Jesse Balser, who he just stepped down, for the last couple of years, he was head coach and athletic director. So he just stepped down as head coach and is still the athletic director. But, we have a great relationship to this day, and he did a great job there as a coach. But he gave me a lot of responsibility, on the road recruiting right away, really gave me a lot of charge of the offense that we had. So getting that experience was very, very helpful to me to be ready to be a head coach eventually. But you also, for those of you that want to coach, you have to be willing to sacrifice. So when I was at Chestnut Hill, I got paid $1,000 a year, for the whole time I was there. So, some people get into coaching, I think, so they can try to be on TV and make millions of dollars. And that is not the way again, if that happens, great, but it should not be the expectation by any means. So what I did was I was a juvenile probation officer in Philadelphia for the whole time I was an assistant coach, and I loved it. It was very flexible. It was a job that I enjoyed doing, which was important. But it also supplemented my income enough that I could be able to coach. So working a full-time job, also coaching for 4.5, 5 years is it's not a lot of time for a social life or anything like that, but it was worth it because it's what I love to do. But so after that time, I went to Camden County Junior College in New Jersey, because my wife and I moved from Philadelphia to New Jersey, and did 1 year there, and then I got interview at Wilmington, which is in the conference with Chestnut Hill. So again, this is where having a good reputation and having people know who you are, know your name, I think this has really helped me, because there were some pretty heavy hitters that wanted the job that I got. And I think it helped a lot that around the conference, I had a good reputation as a coach and as somebody that had graduated from Chestnut Hill. So yeah, it's kind of a short version of my journey from Chestnut Hill to where I am now.
Baby, surprise, baby. Special surprise there. You got to see Maggie Miner in the
Nice.
flesh. So
how old is she?
She's 2.
Okay.
2 years old. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, mine just turned 3 on Friday.
Okay, and then just have 1.
We have 1. Yep.
Yeah. One's a lot.
It is.
1 can keep you going for sure. So you were short of 30 when you got hired, right? You were in your 20s
29.
still?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
28. What do you wish that you would have known as an assistant now that you're a head coach? Like I'm an assistant coach at the college level. What advice or what would you wish you would have known when you were an assistant?
That's a good question. I hate to be cliche, but it really is true that you can prepare as much as you want, but until you're actually doing the job and making the decisions instead of making suggestions, you're never really ready. Um, so I think I don't know if there's any way I could have known as an assistant, but to go back, I wish I would have known how important it is to manage egos and self-confidence and things like that, because I'm a big clinic guy. I love to go to clinics, and I'm fortunate to live in an area where there's clinics everywhere, from DC to New York. There's always clinics in a regular, unquarantined society. So I would go to every clinic I could. And when I first started coaching, I'd be really into the X's and O's, what all these guys are talking about, whether it's Jay Wright or Fran Dunphy, Jamie Dixon, Rick Barnes, all these guys I've seen, Larry Brown, Calipari. But like, the more that I coach, the less X's and O's mean to me. I love X's and O's. I mean, I'm a basketball guy at heart, so I can talk X's and O's all day. But at the end of the day, that's not what wins and loses. What wins and loses is a few things. How tight is your team? So how connected are they? So you really have to be aware of the temperature of your team as they relate to each other. Okay, so is there any animosity between players, or are there cliques forming? You really have to be aware of that. Maintaining players' confidence, especially guys that might not be seeing the minutes that they want to see. Making sure that they stay ready, that they stay confident, making sure that everybody's ego stays in check and nobody is becoming bigger than the team. Those are things that I think until you're really running a program, you don't realize how important they are. As an assistant, whether you're an offensive guy, defensive guy, recruiting guy, you get caught up in what your job is, I think. But as a coach, you have to see everything. And, from that perspective, it's really important to make sure that the things I talked about are getting done.
For sure. I think that was awesome. What wins is less about X's and O's, and it's the culture. I mean, and culture is a word that's thrown around a lot, and it's not the sayings or the phrases, right? I think culture is your behaviors, right? Like your actions create your culture. It's not, I mean, obviously everybody wants a cool saying or the cool phrase, but when it comes down to it, your culture is about substance and what you do on a daily basis. And so I think it's great that you said, how connected is your team? That's one of the first things that can tear apart. Ethan's got a question. Let me unmute, or can you unmute? Let me unmute you, Ethan. You can ask a question here. Go for it,
Can you
Ethan.
hear me? Can you guys hear me?
We got you.
So I was wondering if there's anything that the players can do to improve the culture.
Yeah, great question. Honestly, I think that the players determine the culture. I think, I don't want to say it's all on the players, but I think that the players really dictate what the actual culture is. So what I mean by that is, a coach can go in the first day of practice and have a PowerPoint or have a meeting and say, okay, these are going to be our core values. The core values that I try to preach are respect, attitude, effort, and selflessness. Okay, so I can go in and I can say, hey, this is what we're going to be about, right? But if I leave the locker room and half the team is saying, coach doesn't know what he's talking about, let's go get ours, then that culture falls apart, right? So the coach can set the expectations, but it's really the players that determine the culture. The other thing with being in college, right, is players are around each other almost all day, whether it's class, where they live, working out. Everyone's on social media now, so everybody has 24/7 accessibility to each other. So, a team with bad culture, they're going to have guys that go against the expectations that the coach sets. But teams with good culture are going to have guys that hold everybody accountable to be on the same page as the expectations that the coach sets. And like Coach Miner said, I think it applies to every level. but it might be a little bit different when you get to the high D1 level where you have the best athletes, where sometimes, you know what, a team can have the best culture they want, but if they don't have 6'8" guys that can jump out of the gym, they're not going to beat a team that's more talented. But once you get to that, you know, mid-major D1 level, all the way down to D3, NAIA, JUCO, whatever, that there's not much separation between the good teams and the teams that don't win. You know, talent-wise, I think what the separator is how much is that team bought into the coach's expectations? How much is that team bought into, you know, each other, basically making sure that the team is most important over any kind of individual, you know, success. But thank you for the question, Ethan. That was great.
Yeah, appreciate the answer.
That is a great question. Can you, you said respect, attitude, selflessness, and I think I missed one in there.
Maximum effort.
Effort.
Yeah.
Effort. Yeah, I think those are great things to emphasize. And the selflessness, you know, selfless and tough. You know, if you can be selfless and think of your teammates before yourself, and that's what you're saying, program first. That's one of our core values, because that encompasses doing well in classroom.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to class, that's not putting your program first. If you're going out drinking or smoking, that's not putting your program first. Mm-hmm. So I think that selflessness is a key to what a lot of coaches that I've been talking to emphasize. And I think that's a lesson for anybody that's junior or senior this year wanting to play at the college level, is just knowing that selflessness, you got to put your self-interest away. It's not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking about yourself less.
Right.
You know,
because I like that definitely. Because realistically, what we do in our program, and I would expect most coaches, is the core values that we try to instill are going to carry you throughout your life after you're done playing basketball. Because think about it, you know, Coach Miner and I, we just talked about it. We have 2- and 3-year-old daughters. You can't be selfish if you want to be a husband, if you want to be a father. It's impossible, you know, because you're on that child's schedule. You might be on your spouse's schedule. You know, my wife is also a college head coach. So if we were both selfish, it wouldn't work, you know, because there is a lot of sacrifice, a lot of scheduling, a lot of organization that has to go into it. So the respect attitude, you know, respect is simply treating everybody the way they should be treated, from the janitor to the president of the school. Respect for yourself, for your last name, for the program, for everything you come in contact with. Attitude, when we talk about attitude, I should probably change that, because what I'm really talking about more is resilience. You know, it's making sure that when things go bad, you don't let it defeat you, because, you know, the higher level that you play at, everybody's good, right? So you're going to get scored on sometimes, and you're going to get your shot blocked, and you're going to get a foul called, and you're going to have fans yelling at you. So if you can't deal with that stuff, you can't play. If you can't deal with that stuff, you can't be successful. So that's what we mean when we say attitude. And then effort, everything you do deserves your max effort. Our guys probably get tired of me saying, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Love it.
You know, if you are half-assed, excuse my language, if you're half-hearted in the classroom, you can't be, that's a lifestyle. You can't be all the way in on the court, or in the weight room, or with your family, or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, whoever it might be. And then being unselfish, like we just talked about, those things carry you through life, not just in basketball.
That's great. Great answer. What about when you're recruiting, coach? So how do you, I mean, obviously you want to recruit players that have those characteristics, but I bet you there's not one player that would say, oh, I'm selfish. Mm-hmm. I have a horrible attitude. I'm not resilient. I like to give up. When the going gets tough, I quit. Right? Like no kid's going to say that. So how do you, I mean, do the research or get deep enough in that recruiting process to be able to tell what type of kid you're recruiting?
That's a great question. You know, we've been fooled. Trust me. We've been fooled. You just do the best you can do. We try to as early as possible, we try to get in on guys and make sure we can go see them play, get to know their family, get to know their support system, whether it's coaches or teachers, whoever we can get in contact with. But I'm going to give you guys a little cheat code here. But when we go see somebody play, we pretty much know they're good enough, right? We pretty much know they're good enough to play for our team. What we're trying to do now is look for reasons to cross them off. Okay, we're looking for red flags. We're looking for body language. We're looking for, talking back to the coach. This is a huge pet peeve of mine, and I'm sure most coaches. Are you looking up in the stands at your parents during the game? Are you listening to the coach or listening to your parents? Another red flag. So we're looking at all those things that could maybe give us an inclination that maybe, despite the conversations we have, despite what you might say, we're looking for signs that maybe you wouldn't fit those core values. But like I said, we've been fooled before, but we try to do the best we can to really do our homework and make sure that those guys fit what we're looking for. Because we're not doing anybody a favor if we know we're a certain way and we think they may not be. Even no matter how good they might be, it's not going to work out, right? So we would be doing ourselves and the student athlete a disservice if we ignored signs that might suggest that it might not be a good fit.
For sure. I think that could be one tough thing about this year. There might be a lot of guys in the transfer portal because you're not able to sit down in kids' living rooms this spring. Like normally you'd be in home visits, having kids on campus. And I know that's one thing that like you said, teachers, I'm not just going to talk to the kids' basketball coach. I'm going to talk to their counselor, their, disciplinarian, I'm going to talk to the custodian, right? I love that you said that treat everyone how they want to be treated, not how you want to be treated. And you just have to treat people with respect, whether that's the custodian or the president. And I think that's what you said. And I can't emphasize that enough to these young people listening, is just treat everybody how they deserve to be treated, not how you want to be treated. Because some people you don't treat the custodian the same way maybe you would treat the president. You might use different words or different.
Right. But with respect.
But with respect in
Exactly.
all areas. And I think that that's something that I respect, is people that treat people with respect, that can give them nothing nor take anything away from them.
Right.
Like if you would have agreed to do this call just because you thought I had a 7-footer that I was going to be able to get you, right? Like that, and maybe I do.
Yeah.
But there's also where you give, and then if you need a favor, like if you need a favor, Coach Burke, you got one, right? Like because you doing this for me, it's a favor for me, and it's a relationship bank, so you're helping me, and if there's anything I can do to help you, so I think that how you do anything is how you do everything. How you treat anyone is how you treat, or how you are to everyone, Yeah, that's great.
And I'm glad you emphasized that, because we talk about recruiting. Back east here, we have something called the Hoop Group. Okay, it's pretty much it's an organization that hosts elite camps throughout the summer, AAU events and team events throughout the whole year, really, the summer, spring, fall. But I go to all those things, like all the recruiting stuff I can go to, I go to. But when I go back and look at the players that we've gotten in recruiting, I would say 85 to 90% have been because of some kind of relationship that I already have existing. All right. It's kind of rare for a coach to go out and say, oh, I like that player. I'm going to recruit him, not having known anyone in their circle. A lot of times, guys that we get, it's because I get a referral from someone I trust, someone I know, someone that knows me, and someone that believes that that player could be a good fit, and vice versa. Coach Miner talked on relationships, and I think that's another thing. No matter where you go in life, relationships are incredibly important, and not having the most relationships, but having the best relationships. Coach has mentioned the word networking. That's not something I'm great at, because when I think networking, I think about, going in a room and handing out business cards, shaking a lot of hands, and just having kind of superficial conversations. I try to have as many genuine relationships as possible, and not as many superficial relationships. And I think that fits me. It might not fit everybody, but just the way I am personally, I think that's the best, the best course of action when it comes to building relationships.
I think that's huge. Depth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just width, but depth of
Mm-hmm.
relationships. Reaching out and connecting with somebody, not just when you need something, but if they're struggling, just reach out, not just when they're winning or when you need something, but reach out to them when they maybe lost a game. I think that those genuine relationships is key. I think that's pre-existing relationships you already have. You're going to trust that person, a little bit. So I love that you point out that you're not just going out to those events, meeting a kid, and then that day offering them a scholarship, right? Like, and some kids feel like, oh, well, I'm a senior, I might get picked up late. And it's like, well, they probably already have 100 relationships, but they're just picking the one that they offer. They're not going to meet a new kid and then decide to offer them senior year.
Right.
A lot of times it's a pre-relationship. They've known the kid since freshman year, 8th grade year. But I think that pre-existing relationships is key. I think that's a great point. Well, I appreciate your time, Coach. Out of respect, does anybody have any questions real quick? Out of respect for Coach Burke, he's an East Coast guy, so it's
I had plenty of time. I don't know what you guys.
Okay, yeah. So if you guys
questions
have questions,
you have, shoot.
Morgan, Coach Colburn, if you got anything, Coach Gardner, if you got anything. But no, I think that what you said about knowing their support system and knowing about them, parents. I've crossed kids off my list because of their parents, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
If you got a kid that's just got a parent that just tells them how good they are, how, oh, my son's the greatest. You hear it, Brant, I know you hear it all the time. Dads bragging about how good their kids are. And I'm not that type of guy, but my son's the greatest. And he was the 8th grade all-star. Then they go into that same talk. They just said they're not that type of guy, but.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case, and now, the other thing is social media. So for any kids on here, make sure that your social media is what you want it to be, or what you would want anybody to see. Because what I tell my guys is that, social media is your personal billboard, right? Like, we have I-95 here that goes from Miami all the way up to Maine, right? And it cuts right through Delaware. So the example I use is that, you go up on I-95 and there's billboards everywhere, McDonald's and all these billboards. Does McDonald's have a billboard that says, come here, get high cholesterol, get hypertension, gain weight? It doesn't have anything negative, right, about their brand. It has everything positive. It has affordable, convenient, tasty, all the positive traits of their brand. So whatever you put out on social media, whether it's Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, anything that you guys use, you can't have anything out there that will make people pause and think anything less of you. And that means liking. I've noticed some likes of guys that we have been recruiting that I follow, because now with the algorithm, if you like something on Twitter, it can come up on somebody's timeline. And, I've had guys that like crazy stuff, and I'm like, how did that get on my timeline? And I see who liked it, and that makes me question them. So you have to make sure that everything that you have to make a choice, because is it a little bit, self-restricting, I guess? Are you giving up some freedoms maybe your friends had? Yes, possibly. But you're also going to have opportunities and experiences that they don't have. So, you can't have the good, but also not the sacrifices. So that's just
If you want what other people don't get, you have to do things that they don't do. And you
Absolutely.
said sacrifices, and I think I wrote down social media is your billboard. It's your brand, right? It's what you're putting out there
Mhm.
is huge. So Coach Colburn asked, what are the top 3 things you would like your teams to be known for?
Okay. So I think the first would be resilience. I don't want to be a team that lays down if something bad happens, and that could be within a game, but it could also be from game to game. I don't want to be that team that, that loses confidence or starts to bicker if you lose, 2 or 3 in a row. Um, that resilience is important because anybody that might look at our schedule, I schedule really tough. And this season we started out 0-8. We played 6 teams in our first 7 games that either were, when we played them, or at some point during the season nationally ranked. And we had one returning guy that really got meaningful minutes, and we were very I knew what was going to happen. But in my opinion, that's the best way to go. Like, you schedule up the hardest you can to build that toughness and to build that resilience. And you want to see the best so you can try to be the best. So, if we weren't a resilient team, then we would have gone 0-26, 0-28. But, because we instill that from the jump, and we get guys that are resilient, we were able to, have a decent year, not a great year, a decent year. So resilience is one. And I think that respectful, but competitive, if that makes sense. So I want to be a competitive team that is not a pushover, but conducts himself in the right way. So I think that would be the second. And then I want to be a fun team to watch. I want to be a team that people like tuning into, that like going to their games. We have a packed house almost every night. Gym's not huge, so it's not hard to pack, but we get large crowds, and we get a lot of good feedback from the way that we play. So I think those are the 3 things I would like to be known for. But thank you for that question.
That is a good one. Good question. What's your advice to players on how to improve their basketball IQ during this quarantine?
Well, when I was growing up, you needed a coach to teach you how to play, right? I'm not sure if that was the same experience you had, but when players went in to be coached, we were kind of like a blank canvas, and what coach said was gospel. There are so many resources out there, whether it's YouTube or Twitter. There are tons of basketball podcasts that are great. Coach Miner called me today. I was on a run, and what I listen to on my runs are basketball podcasts. And I can give you some examples of what I listen to, but there are so many resources out there, whether it be YouTube, podcasts, social media, if you're following the right accounts, that can improve your IQ and, make you a better player. So, I think taking advantage of the technology we have and finding the right people to follow and pick from, I think there's plenty of resources out there to get to be a better IQ player.
I think that's great. I think IQ can be taught for sure. Just what to look for, what to read, what angles, all sorts of stuff like that for sure. And then let's see, if you're at a school with a losing program and a bad culture, will you be looked at differently? Tough question.
So is that coming from?
Let's see, Greg, do you want to answer that? Greg's a sophomore. Let's see, he might have had to step out. Oh, here he is. Let's see if I can unmute you, Greg. Greg, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so my school, there's a lot of cliques on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And, the coaches don't really set core values. And it has like bad chemistry with the team. So like, I know we'd be looked at differently by coaches.
Good question. I think that obviously if coaches want to win, the first place they're going to look are winning programs. But I also think that the way that you can present yourself or market yourself can override that. Now you have to do it in a way that you're not killing your coach to your prospective next coach, because I have that happen, right? I have a kid saying, well, I average 15 a game, but if my coach would have let me play my game, I would average 20. I don't want someone that's going to kill their coach, because what do you think you're going to do with to me? So I think that if you can just, number one, do the best you can. And if you are a younger player, try to be that change, because think about this. If you can change, right? If you can change that culture, that's a huge feather in your cap, right? I use this as a coach. The program that I took over in 2014 had never won more than 10 games in a season, and had never made had made the conference playoffs one time in the history of the program. And in the 6 years that I've been there, we are not where we want to be yet, but we've surpassed that win total every year but one, and we've made our conference playoffs 5 out of the 6 years. We had a bad year my second year, but we've won 19 games in a year. We've won 16 games in a year. We've won playoff games in our conference. So I think that, if you can do something to change that culture, and again, I think it goes back to the question I was asked before, is how much power does a player have to change the culture? Players have a lot. So if you can maybe find the players, even if they're not that good, the players that are about the right things, and make that your go-to group. So by the time you're a senior, whenever that might be, that culture will probably be in the right direction. So that would be the first thing. Try to change that culture and do what you can, but then also present yourself as well as possible to coaches, whether it's through emails, whether it's through game film, making calls to coaches. I think that it's not something that can hinder you, but you may have to be more proactive, let's say, than waiting for coaches to come to you in the recruiting process.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's great, Coach. I think that sometimes I like to see how a kid responds to adversity, right? Like, obviously you don't want a kid that's getting their butt kicked every game, but to see a kid, I always tell them, if I walk in the gym, I shouldn't be able to tell whether you're up 20 or down 20 with your body language. I know you mentioned that as a quick red flag way to turn you off. Body language, looking up in the crowd. And sometimes that's more, it's allowed maybe in a program that doesn't have as strong of a culture. And if you're losing, it's easy to turn and point fingers. And I that's a red flag for me. My last coach just didn't like me.
Right.
Well, coaches like the kid that shows up early, the kid that does the extra stuff, the kid that shows up at a meeting that's not required but still shows up, right? Like, coaches like that kid. So when a kid says that coach just didn't like me, I mean,
right.
Obviously not everybody's going to mesh with everybody, but it is kind of a little bit of a warning.
Yeah. And Coach, I mentioned before, once we go see somebody play, most of the time we already know they're good enough. So I actually like to see guys have bad games, see how you react. I know the game well enough that if you're a good shooter, even if you go 0 for 10, I can tell you're a good shooter, right? You don't have to have every shot go in for me to know you're a good shooter. So if I know a guy can shoot, I don't mind seeing him have a 2 for 9 game, and to see how his body language is, because that's going to be a great indicator on how resilient he's going to be.
It's a great point. And I think that's so true. I think you're right on with that. When I'm watching highlight videos, I watch how the bench reacts.
I like that.
I know the shot's going in, right? The shot's going in because it's a highlight video, and every kid makes every shot. Even if they've only made 4 all year, they're putting those 4 in from maybe different angles, so it doesn't look like it's the same. But if the bench all stands up because they know it's going in, unless they go too crazy, right? Like, if they go too crazy, it's more like the manager, right? The manager making the shot. But if they stand up, but if they're making your shots in the highlight video and everyone's sitting down on the bench, it's like either they don't like you and they're not excited for you, or there's just a bad chemistry, or it's like they don't think it's going in.
Right.
And I think what you said, I like to show up and see how a kid warms up. Show up 30 minutes before the game. Don't let them know that I'm there watching, and just kind of see how, or do they have their headphones in with their hoodie up in their own little world, or are they the one giving, hey, let's go, positive touches, right? And I think that's so important for kids to realize, is that be infectious, and that's where Greg, Ethan, you can have that positive body language and positive attitude that can really help you lift everybody around you, not just yourself. Good players raise the level of everyone around them, not just them.
Right.
And obviously I see the question here about The Last Dance. Obviously Jordan was able to get everybody to level up. So what was your take on The Last Dance? Rodman had different rules than everyone else by Phil Jackson. Las Vegas, wrestling, it didn't seem right. So I think, you don't treat everybody the same. You try to treat them fair. But what was your take on that, Coach?
Yeah, that's I was a little young when that was. I think I was, so if that was 98, I was like 12, 13. So I didn't realize that. I forgot about that. Either I didn't know it or I forgot that he just left during the finals, which is crazy. But I think that a coach's job is to know their team, to know the players. So obviously Dennis Rodman is somebody that the coach knew when that ball went up, he was going to get his max effort, and Dennis Rodman was going to bring it no matter what. So I think at that level, it's important. You're more managing than coaching. You're more managing egos. You're making sure guys are at their best so the team can be at their best. And I think in that situation, Dennis Rodman's just the guy that, if he were restricted from doing those type things, he might not have been able to be at his best, or he might not have given Phil Jackson his best because Phil Jackson tried to control him. So I think that is just a great people manager making the right decisions. And it's also the Bulls understanding, look, that's Dennis being Dennis. Ron Harper is not Dennis Rodman. So if Ron Harper missed the practice, that would be, what are you doing? But if it's Dennis, it's different. And, it's the NBA has different rules in terms of, what's allowable and what's acceptable on a given team. I think it translates to our level. We had a guy this year, for the last couple of years, he's a senior, and he's probably one of the most talented offensive players I've ever been around. He scored 1,700 plus points in 3 years. He averaged 23 a game last year, back-to-back scoring champ in our league, first team all league last couple of years. So, he was able to take different shots than some guys could, than anyone else could. And that was something that had to be said. I had to say, look, Jermaine he's proven that he can make these shots. So we're going to have to live with a couple bad ones. But at the end, I think that the net result could be more positive than negative. But I had to make it clear to the team that, look, just because he's earned this right to take this shot doesn't necessarily mean everybody can. So that's something that's, as a coach, is tough to juggle. But, it is important to understand that not everybody has the same rules, and fair does not always mean equal. It could also mean that, if we've had a guy who's a senior who's never been late to anything in his whole life, in his whole career, and, he comes 5 minutes late to a workout, that guy's built up some equity. He's built up some interest for me to believe that, okay, that was an honest mistake. But if a freshman comes in and he's late to something his first week, he doesn't have that same leeway because I don't know him as well. I think on any team it's going to be fair but not equal.
Great. I think that's awesome. I think that fair but not equal is a great point. Morgan got that. I wrote that down, because I think what you're saying is, what's a good shot for one guy is not necessarily a good shot for the other guy. And it's not, and I think the rule, if you have a rule and you miss practice, you don't start the next game, then a kid misses practice or is late, you might not be able to play in the next game.
Right.
But that's why you have a standard. You have, like some guys that have been early their whole career and then are late, something, they've built that trust, that rapport, that made those investments, made those deposits in that relationship. Mm-hmm. And so if they do mess up, you give them a little more leeway because they have been solid for so long.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great. Well, hey, Coach, I really appreciate it. Again, honestly, we'll be watching out here on the West Coast, supporting you how I can. And I love to see a guy that played some Division III, know that it's bigger than basketball, and now see you as a young, lot of experience college coach. I definitely appreciate you taking the time and hopping on with us.
Thank you. Good luck to everybody. And yeah, if you need me, I'm on social media. So feel free to reach out. And Coach Miner, thanks for having me. I love to talk the game, and anything you need, let's keep in touch. And
What's your Instagram or what's your Twitter?
My Twitter is,
I'll put it down
right here. Let's see. My Twitter is Coach Burke _WU.
Coach Burke _WU.
And my Instagram is dburke WU.
Burke.
Burke _WU.
Got it.
I mean, that's mostly like my daughter and my wife, so that's really not anything fun. I'm on Twitter a lot though.
Nice. I think I put those in there. So if you guys have questions, you can reach out, but I appreciate you guys hopping on. Like Coach said when we started, it says a lot about you guys, especially the guys that are coming into Pacific, not really needing to be on stuff like this. Caleb, Ethan. So I appreciate you guys hopping on, and definitely appreciate you again, Coach Burke, and we'll be in touch with you.
Thank you. You guys take care and stay safe.
Thanks,
All right,
Coach.
guys. I'm on you. You guys want to say
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.